It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by Audible.com. That's right, you go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. You go there, you sign up for free, you get a free audiobook. Tonight we are live on TalkStreamLive.com, HazyRadio.com, PSN Radio, Wolf Spirit Radio, TalkSuperstation.com, 1800 Webley, Shazaz Radio. Then we'll play it throughout the week on Para X Radio, Saturday night, 7 p.m., Penny Entertainment on Blog Talk Radio, Sunday mornings. Then on Firehorse Radio and Shake and Wake, good old Shake and Wake with Rick and Annie on Thursday nights. We're going to be adding a couple of really big stations this week, so keep an eye out for that. It's something I'm really looking forward to. Now, tonight we have a very special guest. Robert Morrow. He's a political activist and a political researcher. He's based in Austin, Texas. He's an expert on the JFK assassination and also the Clintons and all their skullduggery and the Bushes and all their equally skullduggery. I really want to thank Robert so much because he really he came in at the last second for us. We were supposed to have Dave McGowan tonight talking about believe it or not, the moon landing hoax. Good old Dave McGowan is the host of the weird scenes inside the canyon. But Dave couldn't make it this week. We had to reschedule, so I started scrambling, and I wanted to do a show about this Jeffrey Epstein, this convicted child molester down in Palm Beach, Florida, who basically got away with murder. Okay, the guy should be doing life in prison. He got away with doing 13 months in jail. So we started scrambling to do a show about that. We tried to get the good old Nick Bryant. Who's the author of Franklin Scandal. You guys know we do all these shows about the Franklin cover-up, about Larry King, with that whole thing down there, with the Boys Town and stuff. We had Jim Rothstein on about that. We just had good old David Sherder on about that recently. So, but Nick Bryant, the author of Franklin Scandal, could not make it tonight. So, but we went right back. We begged Robert Morrow to come on. We went back to him, and he did. He was nice enough to come on at the last second for us. Robert, are you there?
Glad to be here, Ed.
Dude, thank you so much. Why don't you tell us about yourself and about your background, the work you've done in the past, and let's get right into this thing about this pedophile, Jeffrey, this convicted sex offender, Jeffrey Epstein, and his pals.
Well, very briefly on me, I'm a political researcher and political activist based here in Austin, Texas. My expertise, as you point out, is the JFK assassination. I do a lot of research into suppressed political truth topics that the elites have covered up. And the Jeffrey Epstein case, which started coming out in the year 2006, is a prime example of this.
Well, give us an idea. Tell us about what exactly happened. How did it start?
Okay, for folks who don't know, there is a billionaire down in Florida, but he's from New York, named Jeffrey Epstein. He's one of the most prolific pedophiles and child sex traffickers in modern American history. And what makes him unique besides that is that he was pandering underage girls to have sex with his VIP friends. And so he told one of his sex slaves, a girl named Virginia Roberts. She's no longer a girl anymore. She's a woman of 31 with 3 children now. But she was recruited to be a part of his ring, you know, when she was 15 years old. She did not know what she was doing. She was told she's working at a country club in Palm Beach, Florida. A lady named Ghislaine Maxwell approached her and said, "Hey, I've got a rich guy who likes to get massages. You know, come with us. We'll pay you a bunch of money." She didn't mention it was all about sex and molesting young girls, but just, you know, rub a rich guy on the back for an hour, you get a couple $100. So Ghislaine Maxwell recruited a 15-year-old Virginia Roberts to go to see Jeffrey Epstein. So she gets there, and it's a huge mansion in Palm Beach, probably worth $10 million now. And it turns into a sexual massage, and they get her naked, and they have sex with her, and then they say, hey, you're going to be a part of our team now. Well, Virginia Roberts got sucked in when she was 15 years old to be a pedophilic sex slave for Jeffrey Epstein, who told her that he'd had sex with or molested 1,000 girls, many of them from overseas, Europe, maybe South America. And he all came to a head when another girl told her parents that this guy named Jeffrey Epstein had molested her in 2005. She went to the Palm Beach police and said, that her parents did, and said, I think we got a pervert on our hands. And so they started investigating Epstein for a year. A very careful case, going through his garbage, interviewing 5 other child sex victims of Epstein, 2 other material witnesses, carefully documenting and building a case. So you think, okay, they're going to charge this guy with, underage child sex and throw him in jail, right? Well, the police gave their information to a local district attorney, they call him a state's attorney down there in Florida, named Barry Krischer. And Barry Krischer is either the most incompetent, state's attorney in Florida or the most corrupt one ever, because he did not indict Jeffrey Epstein. He intentionally called for a grand jury, which is very rare down in Florida, only used for capital cases. So they had a grand jury examine the case behind the privacy of it. That's the key thing. The prosecutor wanted to have privacy so he could intentionally tank the case in private behind the wall of a grand jury. And he came back with one indictment of Epstein for soliciting a prostitute. Nothing about molesting a 14-year-old girl, nothing about running a child sex slave ring, nothing about a pedophilic provider, none of that. And then so at that point, the local police who had been investigating this case, the police chief, Michael Ryder, and his detective, they were outraged. And they knew the fix was in, that a really rich guy was being allowed to molest girls and not being charged for it, no matter the fact that they had a year-long investigation, an airtight case, fully documented. You can even Google the case they had. If you Google the Jeffrey Epstein probable cause affidavit, Jeffrey Epstein probable cause affidavit from 2006.
Yeah, it's on the smokinggun.com. You can find it on there.
You can find it on there. You can find it on my website, too.
Oh, great. What's the website?
1984 Arkansas ModeOfTheYear.com. It's about Hillary and Bill. Just Google Jeffrey Epstein probable causes affidavit. It goes into detail. So at this point, the local police are being screwed by the local prosecutor who they believe is corrupt. And they're correct on that. Corrupt, how? Was it money? Was it threats that got to this guy? I don't know. So they go to the federal government and they say, look, federal government, we need you to investigate Jeffrey Epstein. This guy is a big league pedophile, not 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 girls, but dozens or hundreds. The federal government, the FBI, come in and conduct a real investigation with lots of FBI agents, and they find 40 other girls who've been molested, sexually abused by Jeffrey Epstein, who would target girls ages 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. If you got to be 17 years old around Epstein, you were almost considered too old, and they would joke about that. So he really was a A1 pedophile. So federal government comes in, and the Miami prosecutors start being investigated by Epstein's lawyers, and they start getting intimidated. And what they do...
Wait a second. You're saying that the prosecutors were being investigated and intimidated by the defense team?
What? Yes, that is correct, because they wanted to make it personal. In other words, you're a prosecutor prosecuting this billionaire with all his VIP friends. We're going to get busy in your life. We're going to follow you. We're going to investigate you. We're going to put private detectives on you. We're going to find dirt on any family members you might have. And that's what they did to them. And they had also been following and investigating Palm Beach Police Chief Michael Ryder and his top detective who were investigating Jeffrey Epstein. And it was working so far And so those Miami prosecutors, I think one was like Anne Marie Villafana, another guy's name, I believe his name was Costa. They were also having to deal with Washington, D.C., and Alberto Gonzales, who was the Attorney General for George W. Bush, sitting above them. And Alberto Gonzales told them he did not want a political mess. Well, you can't process. If you're going to have justice in the Jeffrey Epstein case, you're going to have a huge political mess, because he was pandering, he was molesting girls left and right, and he's personal friends with people like Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew and Alan Dershowitz and Ehud Barak and former Governor Bill Richardson of New Mexico, former Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell, also very close to Jeffrey Epstein. And Epstein was pandering girls to these people, to these men, to these VIPs, these political leaders, business leaders. Donald Trump went down there. Now, I can't prove Donald Trump was with a underage girl, but you know what? The butler for Jeffrey Epstein stole his list of contacts, his black book, and he circled Donald Trump as somebody who was a material witness in the pedophilia down there. So take that for what that's worth. So anyhow, so the federal government ended up rubber stamping the local prosecutor's deal with Epstein, which was, get this, 13 months in jail with a 16-hour-a-day day pass, meaning you go sleep at the jail at night. Who else gets that job, gets that sentence? You molest hundreds of girls, and they send you to jail for 13 months, and so you only have to sleep at the jail at night. And then he had his own private wing in the county jail and a security guard every night while he slept 8 hours. That's like not going to jail at all. Nothing about going to state prison for 20 years and having to deal with those wonderful people in a Florida state prison and what they do to child molesters. Epstein got none of that.
Let me ask you this. Now, and I couldn't find it myself, but I heard other people talking about it, that while he was out on these day passes, he was actually getting on his private 727 and flying to New York and flying to the Virgin Islands during the day. Is that true?
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
No other murderer, rapist, child molester in the world gets that kind of treatment. None.
Yeah, absolutely not.
But we have to understand why he got that treatment. The reason the government covered it up, and the reason it was Alberto Gonzales telling them to do this, and to be honest with you, I can't prove this, but it had to have been President George W. Bush telling Alberto Gonzales to tell the Miami prosecutors to tank the case, because this case was that big, the pedophiles were that powerful. So let's go over who Jeffrey Epstein's most important VIP pedophile friends were. Okay? One would be Bill Clinton, who's very close to the Bush family. The Bush family has pretty much adopted Bill Clinton, a long-time rapist, pervert, serial sexual predator, CIA drug smuggler from the 1980s. So he's got a lot in common with the Bushes. So they consider him family. So that's one point of pressure that could apply, meaning Bill Clinton calling up George Bush saying, I need your help on this. Another point would have been a guy named Les Wexner.
Right.
I'll spell it for you folks out there. It's W-E-X-N-E-R. Les Wexner, who owns the store Victoria's Secrets, the Limited, and a retailing empire. He's worth $4.5 billion. Les Wexner made Jeffrey Epstein the billionaire that he was. Jeffrey Epstein was a much younger guy in the 1980s, 1985. He was pretty smart financially. He helped Les Wexner manage his money and build his empire. And Les Wexner helped make him a billionaire. They were so close, according to Epstein, that it was like they had one brain together.
Right. So
people who closely follow this case think that Les Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein were homosexual lovers.
Really?
Really.
Whoa.
Yeah, because whenever they would go to parties together, they would act like a couple. You ever been to a party? You ever seen two gay guys together? They kind of look like a man and a woman together. They kind of cling to each other, kind of finish each other's sentences, kind of follow each other around, kind of look gay together.
Really? I've never been to those kind of parties, my friend.
Well, I haven't either. But you've been out in public, you've been to a bar, you've been to a club, You've kind of seen that going on.
I own the
well,
nightclub, yeah.
They would act gay together. They would act gay together.
Really?
And so that it's very important to understand this. that Jeffrey Epstein is incredibly close and probably sexually close to a major Republican donor named Les Wexner, who's worth $4.5 billion, who gave $60 million to Ohio State University, who gives millions to Republican presidential candidates like Mitt Romney, like the Bush family. Les Wexner is a very big donor to the Bush family.
Now, do you think that, because with the townhouse in Manhattan, because Wexler owned it first, and it's under a Wexler trust to this
and he
day.
gave it to Epstein.
So now some people say he gave it to him for free. Some people say he paid $20 million. What you think he gave it to him?
Whether it was through compensation for doing work for him, or because of a lot of great gay sex, or because he liked him. I don't know, but somehow he put Jeffrey Epstein in that mansion.
Yeah.
Okay?
Which some people say is the most expensive personal piece of property in the whole state of New York.
It may be. It's the biggest in New York City. How about that? How big is New York City? How many millions and millions live there? It's the biggest personal residence in New York City. It used to be a former school. It's like 7 stories high, that's a guess. But people have to understand why this pedophile got off scot-free. I'm trying to explain to you because his closest friends were very high-level, important men who like to have sex with young women, and they had influence over the administration of George Bush. It's that simple. It's not rocket science, okay? So we got 2 there. We got Les Wexner, who the butler, Alfredo Rodriguez, circled as a big-time pedophile. Big-time pedophile. When I say big-time pedophile, you stick a 14-year-old girl in front of Les Wexner, sex is probably going to be happening. That's what I mean by that. He's also very close to Romney, and he threw a big fundraiser for Romney. He's a big Bush donor. Les Wexner. I'm trying to show you the VIPs, okay? Number 3, Prince Andrew, who Virginia Roberts said she had sex with multiple times, and Ghislaine Maxwell, set them up together. So that's 3 VIPs. And remember, in the year 2000s, the Bush administration did not have many foreign policy allies. They only had 2 they could count on, really: United Kingdom and Israel. Which brings us to our 4th VIP pedophile, Ehud Barak, the former Prime Minister of Israel. His name also circled by Alfredo Rodriguez in the book. Alfredo Rodriguez was the house manager, the butler at Jeffrey Epstein's Palm Beach location. Epstein had 5 places, okay? He had New Mexico, huge house out there. He had a huge house in New York City, probably the biggest in New York State. He had Palm Beach, a $10 million home. He had a 70-acre spread on a thing called Little Virgin Islands, right off the coast of Virgin Islands. That was also called Pedophile Island. And his neighbors would call his airplane the Lolita Express, because they knew when Jeffrey Epstein was flying that plane into town down there, that a bunch of really, really young-looking girls would be hopping off of it. So Ehud Barak is also implicated in the pedophilia. So you had 2 foreign policy allies of America, of Bush administration, England and Israel, with high-level pedophiles. You had Bill Clinton, who has not been publicly fingered as a pedophile, but the lawyers for the sex victims have told certain journalists that, yes, of course, Bill Clinton was getting underage girls. Okay? And then again, I keep going back to Les Wexner. I want folks to understand that it's a Republican problem, too, not a bunch of liberal Democrats only. A major Republican donor having sex with underage girls who's friends with President George W. Bush. If you want to know how this got covered up, those 4 people are the biggest reason for it.
Hey, one thing I'd like to throw out there, too, is that when the police in Palm Beach, when they searched that house, because they got a search warrant to go in the house, one of the things they found was surveillance cameras that they said was for the purpose of blackmail. That was in the search warrant.
And that's true. Jeffrey Epstein, he's a pedophile, right? But his insurance policy is taking pictures of other important pedophiles having sex with underage girls that would ruin their careers or throw them in jail or cost them money or ruin their reputation or cause them public shame. The kind of shame that Alan Dershowitz is going through right now, since Virginia Roberts went public and said, yes, I was forced to have sex with this ugly, demented, troll-looking egomaniac Alan Dershowitz. So you don't mind, let's talk about why Dershowitz is in the news right now. It's because of Virginia Roberts and her lawyers have filed a court filing. Can I read that right now?
Sure.
Okay, this is what Virginia Roberts, who was a child sex slave for Jeffrey Epstein, had to say about Alan Dershowitz, that the psychopathic troll Harvard law professor who's become like the murderers and rapists and child molesters who he defends. Okay? She said Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz was around Epstein frequently. Dershowitz was so comfortable with the sex that was going on that he would even come and chat with Epstein while I was giving oral sex to Epstein. I said that's why a 16-year-old girl was doing sexual favors for Epstein. Alan Dershowitz is talking to him. You know, what's he talking about? The weather? I don't know. Maybe how Chris Darden was really dumb to have O.J. trial in the glove. I don't know. And then she said, I had sexual intercourse with Dershowitz at least 6 times. The first time was when I was about 16, early in my servitude to Epstein, and it continued until I was 19. The first time we had sex took place in New York at Epstein's house. It was in Epstein's room, not the massage room. I was approximately 16 years old at the time. I called Dershowitz Alan. I knew he was a famous professor. The second time I had sex with Dershowitz was at Epstein's house in Palm Beach. During this encounter, Dershowitz instructed me to perform both oral sex and have sexual intercourse. I also had sex with Dershowitz at Epstein's Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, in the massage room off of the indoor pool area, which was still being painted. We also had sex, again, with Alan Dershowitz at Little St. James Island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I was asked to give Dershowitz a massage on the beach. Dershowitz then asked me to take him somewhere more private where we proceeded to have intercourse. Okay, those are the words of a now 31-year-old mother of 3 telling what Alan Dershowitz did to her when she was a teenage sex slave working under Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, that's incredible. Now, Dershowitz, he says, well, but my wife was there, and I had my daughter. Here's what he says, man, okay?
Well, now people want to know, what does Dershowitz say about this?
Well,
okay?
How old was Dershowitz's daughter when all this was going on, that he's bragging about bringing his daughter on these trips?
Well, this would be in the time period of, 1998, 99. So it's 15 years ago. What is his daughter in her 20s now?
Really?
24 or something. Maybe she was age 9 then. Dershowitz is lying, and we have the flight records to prove that he made many or several trips with Jeffrey Epstein without his wife on board and without his daughter on board. And the first one was in December of 1997. See, Dershowitz has been lying on a lot of things. He first said, well, I first met Jeffrey Epstein, around 2003 when he was going to give some money to Harvard. That's when Epstein made his donation to Harvard, 2003. First one, okay? But yet we have flight records that prove he's palling around with Epstein without his wife 6 years before. He also said that, I've only been, it's been professional relationship only with Jeffrey Epstein. And that's baloney because we have a Vanity Fair article where Dershowitz is gushing about how he likes to be friends with Epstein. He would even be friends with him if he went bankrupt. And they were just eating eating hot dogs on Coney Island.
And that was in 2002, by the way.
Well, yeah, 2002. The Vanity Fair piece was 2003. And then he also said that he's written 20 books, and that Jeffrey Epstein is the only person that reads the final draft besides my family. That's how close he was. He was having Jeffrey Epstein proofread his books for him. Now, it's not a professional relationship. That's a buddy-buddy relationship. So he's lying about that. But here's where Dershowitz is really going to pay the price. Because early this month, about 3 weeks ago, he got on national TV, and he said a bunch of lies about Virginia Roberts. He says, I've never met her. Outrageous. He says, I've never been around any underage girls. Laughable. Then he said that Virginia Roberts had said that she had had sex with Bill Clinton. She's never said that, publicly or privately. He said that she said she had met the Queen. She's never said that. So he's going to lose a really big defamation lawsuit to Virginia Roberts. It's just a matter of time. Is it going to be this year?
Let me ask you, because I think her father has said that she met the Queen. Now,
the father said that, and then he retracted it.
Okay.
She hadn't said that. She could sue her dad for defamation, but she's going to sue Alan Dershowitz instead.
Where do you think the dad fits in? You think he's just out for a buck or what? Because you don't really hear her mentioning her dad much in anything else.
I mean, you know, the easiest victims for a pedophile to target are kids that come from broken families and dysfunctional families, okay? So I don't know how well she gets along with her father if she talks to him, or how close they are, okay? I think her parents are divorced. So,
yeah, she seems to only talk about her mother and her grandmother, that she was calling them for help and stuff like that. And another thing, too, in that search warrant, as they found in Jeffrey Epstein's desk, is a high school transcript of a kid. So this guy was somehow getting copies of high school transcripts of these kids so he could pick out the ones that were troubled and without fathers and stuff like you said.
Well, no, I think he was probably trying to be a pretend mentor figure to them and say, bring me your grades, I'll take a look at them and stuff like that. That's what I would guess. But no, he had a whole team of girls who were out recruiting. These girls were around age 20 who were recruiting underage girls for him. And Alan Dershowitz helped negotiate a non-prosecution agreement for all those pedophile enablers, and also himself, because he is a co-conspirator in pedophilia himself, because he's flying across state lines to go meet underage sex slave prostitutes. Alan Dershowitz is a co-conspirator, and that's why it's so hilarious and why it's so relevant that he was negotiating a non-prosecution agreement. Now, nobody knew about this non-prosecution agreement because the federal government, that would be the Bush administration, sealed it. Okay, in 2007 when they made it, and it took 2 or 3 years for a lawsuit by the local Palm Beach paper to get access to that and prove that Jeffrey Epstein got the same kind of deal with the federal government as he did with the local state attorney, Barry Krischer, the corrupt Barry Krischer. And not only that, there was a non-prosecution agreement where all the other pedophile enablers got off scot-free. Usually when you have a plea bargain, you give somebody a good deal so they will give in all the other criminals, right?
Right.
This is the exact opposite. Where you have a plea bargain, it was a great deal. You figured he would give up, 50 other people, right?
Right.
No. They all got non-prosecution agreements. So the whole point of it is that the U.S. government was actively engaged in covering up and protecting pedophiles, VIP pedophiles. And they were hardcore about it. So the government's the bad guy. Epstein's the bad guy. His lawyers are the bad guys. The local state attorney's the bad guy. The federal attorneys down in Miami are the bad guys. And the really bad guys are their bosses in Washington, D.C. that were totally undercutting them and helping them to crack, meaning crack and not go after Epstein hard, not go after the co-conspirators. So, ask me about Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah. No, I want to ask you first about her father, because I didn't have time. I did some research on Ghislaine, enough to learn how to pronounce her name. But what's the story with her dad? He was a big shot publisher in the UK.
So is it Ghislaine or Ghislaine? Ghislaine?
I'm copying you.
It's Ghislaine. Ghislaine, I'm guessing Maxwell. Her father was Robert Maxwell.
Right.
He was. There's a book written on him calling the world's biggest Mossad agent.
Really?
Okay. Whether he was or was not, and he was a billionaire that basically went broke. And I think and Ghislaine thinks this too. Somebody threw him off his yacht and killed him in 1991. Okay. Murdered him. So after he was murdered or died, by accident, probably a murder. Okay. She was very vulnerable. And she's a young lady that has a lot of VIP friends, in society because she's the daughter of a billionaire. And Jeffrey Epstein hooked up with her. And it was a mutually beneficial arrangement because he was taking care of her financially, and she was probably having sex with him. And not only that, worst of all, she turned into one of his top pedophilic recruiters, and she was making child pornography. She was recruiting girls like Virginia Roberts, age 15, to come have sex in orgies with Jeffrey Epstein. She was participating in these orgies full bore, okay?
Wait, she's the one standing in the background when Prince Andrew is there with his arm around the 17-year-old Virginia Roberts, so this girl who was getting raped and molested from 15 years old that we know about.
She was setting up Virginia Roberts to be raped and molested. Of course, we're saying, statutorily raped and molested, but it's rape nevertheless.
Oh yeah.
And she also went to Bill Clinton's Chelsea Clinton's wedding in July of 2010 at an invitation of her fellow pervert friend Bill Clinton. So Bill Clinton had a really great and close relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell, the pedophile recruiter and the pedophile freak, and Jeffrey Epstein, the world's biggest VIP pedophile of his era. Bill Clinton made 17 trips with him. Jeffrey Epstein had 21 ways to contact Bill Clinton. I've got Bill Clinton's personal cell phone number over here somewhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah, let's read it out.
Let's give him a call.
We're on the air right now. We don't mind reading out Bill's personal cell phone number.
Let's give him a call.
Of course, it's been changed now. Okay, so I'm going to warn you guys. The number's been changed. But his personal cell phone number back in 2005 was, if you want to reach rapist Bill Clinton, you'd call 914-861-9380. And that's not, it's been changed, okay? So don't call like it is somebody else. But the 914 area code is the Chappaqua, New York area code. So it was 914-861-9380, and it's listed in the Epstein's Black Book as number 42, do not use, meaning 42 president. It's his personal cell. Well, there are 21 other ways to contact him. I'm looking at it right here. He has 4 different phone numbers for Mike Lee. I think it's probably his head Secret Service agent. He's got a number for David Slade, Sarah Lallam, Denise Diorio, his speaking scheduler of that era, Joe Cashin, the assistant director of scheduling, some girl named Uma, Mark Gillespie, still another phone number for Mike Lee. Mike Lee must be important in the Bill Clinton world because he has 5 ways to call him. Jim Morrison, Henry Richard, Laura Clinton's scheduler, a guy named Doug Bann, who was Bill Clinton's top 8 at that time. Another phone number for a friend of Doug Bann. This guy collected numbers of how to reach Bill Clinton every possible way. Well, when you got to hook up with your VIP ex-president with a 14-year-old girl from Europe, you got to get him on the phone, right?
Let me ask you a question. Now, you read the Vanity Fair article by Vicki Ward. Did you also see that she did some recent interviews? Did you watch those?
I don't know if I did. Tell us about them. I'll interview you.
I'm sorry, man. Because she's saying that when she talked, because she was saying, who is this Jeffrey Epstein? And because when I met him, this guy had nothing interesting to say. He wasn't that bright. And she was trying to figure out where all his money came from and all that. So and even when you look at his picture, man, he has like a deadpan face. Like what are these fascinating conversations that all these people are supposedly wanting to have with him? And if he has this great ability to exchange ideas with the most brilliant people in the world, why doesn't he have a TV show or a radio show to share with the world?
Well, here's what your point is. Vicki Ward, who wrote an article on Jeffrey Epstein in 2003, was prevented by her editor.
Oh, really?
From putting in his problems with molesting girls. That was the big issue. So she wrote an article for Vanity Fair 2003, then she wrote another one here in January saying, I tried to warn you about Jeffrey Epstein in 2003. Her editor she had a girl and her mother going on the record about Jeffrey Epstein trying to molest her back then.
Really?
So you have all these enablers of Jeffrey Epstein in the media. You also have these enablers of Bill Clinton who are refusing to report on the Bill Clinton-Jeffrey Epstein connection even today. So back to Ghislaine Maxwell, okay? You have to understand that what a freak she was. So what did they say? Well, here's what Virginia Roberts, the number 1 sex slave for Jeffrey Epstein, said about her. It's very important to know this. Ghislaine Maxwell was heavily involved in the illegal sex. I understood her to be a very powerful person. She used Epstein's money, and he used her name and connections to gain power and prestige. One way to describe Maxwell's role was as the madam. She assumed a position of trust for all the girls, including me. She got me to trust her and Epstein. It turned out that Maxwell was all about sex all the time. She had sex with underage girls virtually every day when I was around her, and she was very forceful. I first had sexual activities with her when I was approximately 15 at the Palm Beach mansion. Had many sexual activities with her over the next several years in Epstein's various residences, plus other exotic locations. I had sex with Maxwell in the Virgin Islands, New Mexico, New York, as well as France and many other locations. I also observed Maxwell have sex with dozens of underage girls. So let's just throw out the notion that Ghislaine Maxwell is some sort of a victim in this process. She is a co-pervert with Jeffrey Epstein. She also said that Maxwell had large amounts of child pornography that she personally made. Many times she made me sleep with other girls. Some of them were very young for purposes of taking sexual pictures. They had many orgies with many girls. Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and a guy named Jean-Luc Brunel. Can we talk about him?
Yeah, it was on the tip of my tongue.
Okay. Everybody out there understands that Jeffrey Epstein, on one side of him, he knew all the important people, the Clintons, the David Baracks, the Bill Richardsons, the George Mitchells, the Dershowitzes, on one side. On the other side was who's going to recruit all of these girls for him. He's not out there trolling malls every afternoon at 6 o'clock at night himself, okay? He has a team providing girls for him. One of his teammates was a long-time modeling scout / pedophile named Jean-Luc Brunel. That's Jean-Luck Brunel, B-R-U-N-E-L. Jean-Luc Brunel was exposed as an abuser of girls as far back as 1988 when Diane Sawyer of CBS News did an expose of him on 60 Minutes.
I remember that.
That's 1988, okay? Epstein is just hooking up with Les Wexner in 1985. Somehow he met with Brunel maybe in the 90s or so. So as Epstein was rising to power, Brunel was still in the modeling industry. So really what Brunel is, he would go overseas and try and find very, very young girls to, put in the modeling industry, but really to have sex with. And he would drug them too. He was known for doing that as well. There's a really good quote in here I'm trying to find on my webpage I'm going to read you guys about Jean-Luc Brunel. Let's see.
Well, what about while you're looking for it?
Hey, go ahead.
Roberts also said that he had the ability to get passports, U.S. passports, to bring these girls in, and like phony passports. And other people were talking too about Epstein's ability to get these first-class upgrade stickers. So these guys had some kind of pull.
Governmental connection.
There you go.
You have the government enabling a pedophile ring. That's pretty bad right there. They obviously had government connections to do that. Nobody else gets to give a bunch of passports for their little models, do they?
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And there was even one thing in the by the way, Donald Trump too. He was interviewed in that Vanity Fair article too, and he was joking around about Epstein's.
Well, I get to quote Trump here, okay?
Go ahead.
And then I'll get to Brunel. So this is what New York Magazine talked to Trump in, I think, the early 2000s. He says, if you talk to Trump, a different Epstein emerges. He says, quote, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy," Trump booms from a speakerphone. "He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do. And many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life."
Yeah,
Trump's name is circled by the butler as somebody who would be a material witness in the pedophilia. Either he was a pedophile himself or he would have witnessed it. Okay. So sorry about that, Donald Trump. You've been exposed. Now, Virginia Roberts said that I didn't have sex with Donald Trump, and neither did the other girls. Well, that's the girls she knew about, right? Epstein has 5 locations. She's not always there all the time. Okay, Jean-Luc Brunel, to show you what a sick freak this guy is. Remember, he's very close to Epstein. He visited him 67 times when Epstein was in jail.
Really?
Yes. So he is, we're talking, it's basically Jean-Luc Brunel and Jeffrey Epstein sitting in each other's lap with a 15-year-old girl on the other knee. That's how close they were. And Virginia Roberts said that Jean-Luc Brunel was heavily and deeply involved in the orgies with underage girls. So this comes from Michael Gross's book, 1995, called The Model. He says, Jean-Luc is considered a danger, says Jerome Bonnevier. Owning Karen's at the modeling agency was a dream for a playboy. His problem is that he knows exactly what girls in trouble are looking for. He's always been on the edge of the system. Girls would be at him if he was said, there with Jean-Luc because he's the boss. Jean-Luc likes drugs and silent rape. It excites him. The silent rape means when the girl is passed out.
All right.
Okay? And he says, there was a little group. I really despise Jean-Luc as a human being for the way he's cheapened the business, says John Casablancas. There is no justice. This is a guy who should be behind bars. There was a little group, Jean-Luc, Patrick Gilles, and Barsano. They were very well known in Paris for running the clubs. They would invite girls and put drugs in their drinks. Everybody knew they were creeps. That's one of the closest friends of Jeffrey Epstein.
What about this story? There was a blurb in the New York Post that Epstein was giving 3 12-year-old girls as a gift for his birthday.
That's one of the rumors. I think that probably comes from Virginia Roberts. So there you go. 3 12-year-olds. We're not talking, 18-year-old girls or even 17, okay, But the age of consent in Florida is 18. In New York is 17. In the Virgin Islands is 18. So they were breaking the law everywhere with having sex with underage girls. So,
and also, too, if people go and look up one of the recent affidavits by this girl, Virginia Roberts, she includes, this is one of her latest ones, and she includes pictures of what she looked like when she was taken to New York City at like 15, 16 years old. I got a 14-year-old daughter, okay? She's a little kid, man. She's a little kid, and you can look at that picture and see a little kid. That should be out playing basketball or something,
That's right, or soccer.
Right.
And not having to deal with a very weird, demented sexual predator such as Alan Dershowitz, Jeffrey Epstein, or Jean-Luc Brunel, or Bill Clinton. Those guys are a worst-case scenario for a young girl. So Virginia Roberts is known as Jane Doe number 3. Jane Doe number 1 gave a recent interview, and she said that when Epstein met her, she was 14 years old. And she was skinny, and in her words, she said she had no boobs, and she was petite and tiny, and that's who Jeffrey Epstein wanted to have sex with. And she was the one who went to her family went to the police when they found out what had happened. She was the one that triggered the investigation to Jeffrey Epstein, a very non-mature, sexually innocent 14-year-old girl.
Yeah, a lot of people, they think it's this kind of he said, she said kind of thing, but it's not. These are all.
Well, no, it is, but it's a he said, she said, she said, she said, she said, she said, she said 30 more times kind of thing.
Yeah, but also too, there were convictions, and also too that there's 17 court settlements with these young ladies.
There's 32 court cases that have been settled.
Oh,
Jeffrey
really?
Epstein has settled with the families of the girls he molested. Not 1 or 2, not 10 or 20, not even 2 dozen, not even 30. 32.
Wow.
32. So we have a very serious, prolific pedophile that went to jail for 13 months only with a 16-hour-a-day day pass, that could hop on his plane and go to New York during the day, hop on his plane and go to Virgin Islands, who got off scot-free, who would sleep for his punishment. He would sleep at night in the county jail in his own wing with his own private guard. He's not being knifed by the other inmates. He's not being raped by the big, mean, nasty guys in jail.
And they have a list of his commissary purchases, and even though he's only in jail 8 hours a night for 6 days a week, he's in there buying Vaseline and Jergens hand lotion. You've got to be making that up. Oh no, brother!
Document that.
I will. It's on Smoking Gun. You don't need to listen to me. Smoking Gun went and got it. You'd think that was a joke, right? I know.
Well, did he also buy a blow-up doll, too?
No,
and maybe a vibrator?
But, Robert, just think, man. You and me both know.
He's buying Vaseline and Jergens lotion.
Yes, and other stuff, too, that you know he wasn't using, like Spam. He stays in there for 8 hours. He's not eating Spam. He's not that hungry. You know, so he was giving stuff to other prisoners as well that I guess he had deals with or whatever. By the way, that was the same jail he donated $90,000 to that police force. They gave it back, but still, it's the thought that counts.
Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein would bribe everybody every step of the way. He used to give $100,000 a year to the Palm Beach police because he's a pedophile. He figured if he gave him $100,000 a year, they're not going to investigate him.
Yeah.
He'd give $100,000 a year to the local ballet group for massages. Jeffrey Epstein's code word for sex was massage. So he thought he had it all figured out. He pretty much did, but he's going to have to deal with this the rest of his life, as will Alan Dershowitz. I'm going to read some more names of folks who were really close to Jeffrey Epstein, and I'm going to tell you if I think they're a pedophile or not.
Okay. The last 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, of course, Bill Clinton. Yeah. Well, it hasn't come out publicly yet, but yes, of course, he's a pedophile. Prince Andrew, no doubt about it. Amy Barack, absolutely. Les Wexner, billionaire businessman, GOP donor, big-time pedophile. Those top four, were probably the reasons why the federal government's case got corrupted. We got Jean-Luc Brunel. We just talked about him. He's an off-the-charts pedophile. Bill Richardson, name circled by the butler, he's a pedophile. Larry Summers, the former president of Harvard. His name is not circled, but, you know, he's hanging out with Epstein. Kevin Spacey, he's a star actor in the House of Cards. He's also good friends with Bill Clinton. See, Kevin Spacey, people tell me, well, he's gay. And my response is, wait, have you ever heard the word bisexual? You know? Actor Chris Tucker, Donald Trump. I don't have any proof on that, but Trump has to be a very suspicious name in this business. Alan Dershowitz, absolutely. Hardcore, pedophile, lying, psychopath, needs to be thrown in jail for decades. George Mitchell, former U.S. Majority Leader, former Senator from Maine. People have told me who say this case, George Mitchell was being provided underage girls to have sex with. Pedophile. Okay? And then there are the names of the people who were circled in Epstein's book. And a lot of them are foreign names. I'm not going to read them all out. One is Peter Soros, the nephew of George Soros. Name was circled as a pedophile. Courtney Love, the former wife of what I guess Kurt Cobain, right?
Yeah. By the way,
bisexual singer.
Yeah, we know her dad. Her dad's been on my show, and Courtney Love grew up in a sex cult. You know, this Children of God. I don't want to misquote the name of the cult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would not be surprising for her to be a pedophile. Then also Ghislaine Maxwell, and there's some other foreign names. Alberto Pinto, his name was circled. He's a high-end French interior designer. Dr. Eva Anderson, a former Miss Sweden, a former girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein. Her name was circled. Les Wexner had multiple addresses in this book. Every single one of them, Alberto Rodriguez circled. He was, deep into pedophilia. So let's see who else. I'm skipping some names, folks, but who not know. A guy named Timothy Newcomb of Newcomb Electronic Systems. Name was circled. Architect Douglas Schottel from New York and the Bahamas. Name was circled. The pilot's name, Larry Vasovsky, was circled because even if he was not engaging in the sex, he would know that it was going on. The chief pilot for Jeffrey Epstein, Larry Vasovsky. A guy named Tom Sawyer from New Jersey, a guy named Christopher Gay, G-A-I-E from Florida. Those names were all circled. Now, the brother Alfredo Rodriguez only knows what's going on in Palm Beach. He's not in New Mexico. He's not in the New York mansion. He's not on the freaking airplane, which is like, a Playboy mansion and an orgy at the same time. He's not on the plane. And he's not down at Pedophile Island in the Virgin Islands. There were many, many more VIP pedophiles who Jeffrey Epstein was pandering underage girls to than what the house manager in Palm Beach knows.
Hey, you know what's interesting too, man? Because you got this list of names, list of suspects, right? Now, how come we're not digging? How come we're not getting their garbage? How come we don't have cameras in front of their house? The cops thought this was significant enough that they put this butler in jail for 18 months, longer than Epstein did, because these were witnesses and other victims that could have been prosecuted. Okay, well, why aren't they doing it now?
Because it happened a long time ago, and these are very powerful people, and they got off the first time too.
Yeah, we know they're still
because
doing it.
the elites deem it their right to sexually molest underage children, but not anybody else's. That's what elitism is, meaning rules and laws for everybody else, but none for them.
Well, then real quick, because Dershowitz is mentioning names like Evelyn Rothschild. You think he's taking his life in his hands by doing that? You think Dershowitz is going to?
Well, he was saying that Miss Rothschild was going to make a donation to Harvard at about the time that he met Jeffrey Epstein, and that's how that's where he lied. He says, "Well, I met Jeffrey Epstein through Miss Rothschild, around 2003
at a party."
Bull. We got flight records. Dershowitz on the pedo plane, December 1997. Okay, so Dershowitz is telling a lot of lies and getting caught in a lot of lies. He's going to lose a defamation lawsuit to Virginia Roberts. It's only a matter of time. It might take 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years, but he's going to lose some big money to her, and that will serve to discredit him.
But do you think he might turn up dead though? Because he is kind of a loose cannon right now, just kind of floating,
Yeah, I mean, another thing that. The other reason that Virginia Roberts is becoming so credible is because Alan Dershowitz is acting like an insane man on TV.
Right.
But he is obviously panicked. He's telling you a bunch of lies, getting caught in a bunch of lies. When the flight logs came out and proved that he knew Jeffrey Epstein 6 years before he was pretending to know that, and the fact that he says that he only had a professional relationship, but he obviously had a social relationship, he's lost a lot of credibility. Most folks are not believing Dershowitz who followed this case. I don't think anybody is.
Yeah, but when he's interviewed, the host always says, "Well, I know you didn't do anything. Oh, I've known you a long time." They're giving it,
Well, the media are personal friends of the pedophiles, like Alan Dershowitz and Bill Clinton. I'm very serious about this. The people that own the media, the people at NBC, who put Alan Dershowitz on, but they don't put Nick Bryan on, they don't put me on. Yeah. Okay. They are covering for the remains of a pedophile ring. It's that simple. It's not hard to understand. They're personal friends with the pedophiles. They may be pedophiles themselves, but they're personal friends with them. Anybody who lets Dershowitz talk on and on and on and on TV and does not put the Daily Beast Konita Sarnoff on or put Gawker's Nick Bryan on is really doing PR work for VIP pedophiles. That's my opinion. But you're not, because you had me on for an hour.
No, yeah, and I totally agree with you, man. When you see Nancy Grace, and we know people that know Nancy Grace. We have them on our show here, and you would think that she would stand up to Dershowitz, but no, they're afraid of him, man.
Well, has Nancy Grace covered this at all?
Oh, yeah. She covered it, and she's really mad. She's mad at Roy Black and Left Court and these guys for the way they were harassing the DA's office down there in Florida. She doesn't like this sweetheart deal that Epstein got. But she had on Dershowitz as a guest and said, "Alan, I know you would never do anything like this because I've known you for 4 years."
She's covering for Dershowitz, too.
Yeah, I know.
She is. And so, see, she can't accept the reality that Alan Dershowitz is a child rapist and a serial a demented nut job, a very dangerous man, and a sick. I cannot describe to you what a sick little freak Alan Dershowitz is. So Nancy Grace is covering for him. So when she's sitting there saying that he's innocent, she is wrong. Virginia Roberts is telling God's truth, and Nancy Grace is covering for a pedophile. Period.
Robert Morrow, we got 2 minutes left. Okay, and I want to thank you for coming on. And good old Nick Bryant, we'll get him on in the future, the author of Franklin Scandal. You can find a link to that book. But give us real quick, give us your blog and any appearances you got coming up, anything you want to talk about, or what do you want to leave us with?
Well, the one thing I want folks to do, we have to sell some books from Nick Bryant, who wrote a really good book on a 1980s pedophile ring called The Franklin Scandal. You can get that off Amazon. It's The Franklin Scandal by Nick Bryant. I'll repeat that again. It's a fascinating book. He spent 9 years of research on it. It was about mainly a bunch of Republican high-level VIPs in the 1980s who would sexually molest young boys and get away with it. Whereas the Jeffrey Epstein case is more about VIP pedophiles molesting young girls. So Nancy Grace is doing a real disservice by not having on Nick Bryant on her show, was she on CNN? HLN, and by not having Conchita Sarnoff of the Daily Basis covered this for years. Those folks can tell you what happened in the Epstein case, but Nancy Grace is choosing not to. Okay, she's getting a little mad at the Miami lawyers. She's not telling you the real truth. The truth is there were VIP pedophiles far more important than the lawyers that Jeffrey Epstein hired, who were probably very directly contacting the government and telling them to let Epstein off the hook because they did not want their names coming up in court cases.
Well, you know what? The biggest media hypocrisy in this Epstein case is that you don't hear anybody talk about it, is that Epstein was a school teacher. He was a middle school, high school teacher at a private school with a little girl. So it was right around the corner from my grandmother's house in Manhattan. I know this school, the Dalton School. And they wore that same little uniform with the knee socks and the short skirts that this pervert has this fetish for.
He does. Yeah. And Virginia Roberts said that was his favorite uniform, was a Girl uniform. She had a latex outfit, a Girl uniform. So he liked to have under sexually developed girls to have sex with.
So what a coincidence. And he just happened.
He's a billionaire in Florida, New York. He could hire any adult high-end hooker that he wanted to. You understand that? Yeah. They're on the internet. But he doesn't. He wants to molest little girls
and take their innocence. He wants to steal from them, because you're right.
And take their innocence. Yeah.
Because he could. So you're right, man. You're right.
So.
Brother.
He's a sick freak. So we're going to hold him accountable. This is not going to go away. Are we going to get the judge to overturn that corrupt plea bargain? I don't know. But if they do, buddy, if they do, the water will be flowing over the dam in this case, and I hope it does.
Well, me too. Well, brother, we made it to number 3 on TalkStream Live tonight, so we're right behind Michael Savage and Mark Levin. We're ahead of Alex Jones. We're beating all these guys, Glenn Beck. So a lot of people are hearing this tonight. Thank you so much for coming on. And thank you for coming on and supporting Nick Bryant, the author of Franklin's Scandal. And you can, I'm going to put the link up on the Opperman Report blog. People can go there and link on that. So thank you so much. We got a hard break. We got to go. But thank you, Robert Morrow.
You're welcome.
If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tammy on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils Independent Distributor. These 100% therapeutic-grade oils help support the body's natural functions. You can click on her website posted on Essentially Tammy, that's T-A-M-I, to see the current deals and check out the benefits of oils such as frankincense, joy, valor, lemon, thieves, panaway, and many more. Email Jocotami, that's Jocatami @yahoo.com, or call 352-239-8546. That's 352-239-8546. Hey, don't forget good old Amanda at Pacific West Bamboo. Pacific West Bamboo, 503-839-8126. You can reach her at demroots@oppermail.com. Pacific West Bamboo, your number one source for timber, construction, and craft-grade bamboo poles, plants, products, and more. They specialize in eco-friendly reclaimed wood products for the home and garden. They're located in Portland, Oregon, servicing the Northwest for over 10 years. They can be reached at 503-839-8126. That's 503-839-8126. Her Facebook page is Pacific West Bamboo. They can and do ship nationwide, and they're currently getting a new line of bamboo flooring, veneers, and laminates made from Guadawa bamboo, one of the world's strongest bamboos, grown and produced and manufactured in Central America using only economically and environmentally friendly practices and standards. Good old Mike Gray at infinityhomeplans.com. Check out Infinity Home Plans and Design Services, your resource for 3D and 2D draftsman services. They offer a multitude of products, including Stockholm plans, 2D digital drawings, 3D models, renderings, and more. That's infinityhomeplans.com. Hey, don't forget emailrevealer.com. That's my website, emailrevealer.com. And we offer all different kinds of services. Current place of employment locate. Let's say you're trying to locate where your ex-husband or your ex-wife is working so you can collect on child support. You contact us, we can locate their place of employment for you and help you collect on that child support. Let's say you think that your husband or your wife is cheating on you. Give us their email address and we can trace it back to online dating websites and dating services. So we have a multitude of services on emailrevealer.com. Hey, don't forget the New World Mexican Women. Okay, and just Google New World Mexican Women. You can find their book where they first describe their love letters to their men and their sons and their uncles and their brothers who have traveled from South America to North America to work as migrant workers. But the women down in this town there in Guerrero, Mexico, they want their men to come back. So they've written these beautiful love letters, and they've put them all in this beautiful coffee table book. First, the letters are written in Spanish, handwritten. You can see pictures of the people writing the books. And then it comes on after that, and it's typewritten in English. And then also, too, the second half of the book is teaching you how to make authentic Mexican jewelry from these New World Mexican women. You can find their book on Lulu.com. It's only $19, or you can download the digital edition for free. That's New World Mexican Women. And it's a two-part book where first part is the love letters, and the second part is the making the handmade jewelry, the authentic Mexican jewelry. But you can also contact them too as well if you want to get a deal on wholesale jewelry from Mexico from these women.
Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. This show is brought to you by Audible.com. You go to audibletrial.com /Opperman Report, and that's how you get yourself a free audio book. You sign up there for free, you get a free book, and all that's real cool. Now we're adding a couple of stations. I got a couple for the people who don't know me, we add in stations every week. I'm a private investigator, and I'm also a digital forensic investigator. So when we had Robert Morrow on tonight, who's a political researcher and an expert on JFK assassination and the Clintons and the Bushes, and he's been researching and reporting on this Epstein case. I've also done my own investigation on this as well, okay, and I'd like to present that to you. I've only been working on this for a few days because I was hearing this story about Epstein and Prince Andrew and stuff like that, and filtered through the mainstream media and the little clips you see on Radar Online and people posting stuff on Facebook. But I really went in this week and I contacted the lawyers in the case. I contacted some other reporters in the case. I read everything available. I watched every single YouTube video, and I went and got all the online available court documents. And you can do this yourself. You can go to Pacer. PACER is an online database where lawyers and private investigators can go in and look up cases, and you can read all the pleadings. And the case number on this is 08-80736. Now, if you don't have a Pacer account, you can just Google case number 08-80736, and a lot of stuff that was on Radar Online or what's that thing called, Smoking Gun, will have the pleadings and the probable cause affidavit and all this kind of stuff. But I've read everything on this in the past week. Okay, so what I'd like to do in this next hour is present to you the case and my theory that I put together on this. Before we get to that, I also want, if we have time, I'd like to give you a little update on the good old Reverend Pinckney. I'll do that after I do this thing with this case here. Good old Reverend Pinckney, as much as we love him, they moved him to a more serious prison. He's in the minimum security portion of the prison, but he still. And we're just praying for him, and we're hoping we can do something to get him out of there, okay? As much as we can. Okay. Hey, good old Robert Morrow just sent me an email saying, we kicked some pedo ass tonight, didn't we? He just sent me a message in my Gmail account. Thank you, Robert Morrow. We really did. And I want to thank Nick Bryan, too. He tried to get on, but he couldn't, and he's the author of the book Franklin's Scandal. And I'm going to have a link to that on my Opperman Report blog. Okay, so everybody can go there and pick up that book, too. And also tonight, we were supposed to have on Dave McGowan, author of the Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon. We're going to be talking about the moon hoax, and he's going to be coming on in a couple of weeks. Next week, we've got Mark Ebner, and I'm going to talk to him about this case, but also he's coming on to talk about the Bill Cosby case, which I think there's a little bit of overflows in these two cases here. Okay, and we're going to get into all of that. Okay, we're going to be adding at least one really big news station and probably two, okay? And these two news stations we're adding is probably going to double the amount of listenerships we have tonight. Okay, it's not that we're reaching enough people now. We're going to be reaching double or over double what we are tonight within the next couple of weeks. Okay, I can't make any announcements on that. One is we're 99% confirmed, and the other one's about 80% confirmed. So if you want to lock in, if you want to advertise on a show, you want to reach a ton of people with your product, your website, your business, whatever, email me at oppermanreport@gmail.com. Okay, next we've got Mark Ebner. Okay, now with the same thing, we got the same thing going on with the YouTube channel and the after shows and the archives. If we can get 10,000 people to subscribe to the Opperman Report YouTube channel, and we can get you to go to the Opperman Report blogspot.com, you go there and click on those ads, and watch the videos and all that stuff like that, then we can fund all this for free. We'll let Google and AdSense pay for everything we're doing here. If not, we're going to have to work out a deal where we have the archives for sale, okay, either through iTunes or something like that, or through a paid subscription, because, we're struggling here to get everything here going that we want to get going here, and it's holding us back. You can find the archives right now for free up on the Opera Report YouTube channel or Spreaker.com or iHeartRadio.com. Don't forget our TruthFunders.com campaign we're doing to build up. You go to TruthFunders.com, you look us up, Opperman Report Film Company, that we want to start doing documentaries about the West Memphis Three and about the Son of Sam and about the Process Church and about Mark David Chapman. All these topics that we are on the cutting edge of, that I think we have more information than anybody else out there has. And we may even want to do a film about this information that I've come up here with this Jeffrey Epstein pedophile case. Now, what I'd like to get into is this, okay, is that this story has been completely misreported in the mainstream media, okay? This current Florida lawsuit, okay, is by an admitted victim of sexual abuse by Epstein. There's no doubt about the fact that Virginia Roberts was a victim of abuse by Jeffrey Epstein. That's 100% fact. Epstein confessed. He pled guilty to that. There's no doubt about that. It's not a lawsuit to get money. It's not a lawsuit to get money from Epstein. It's not a lawsuit to get money from the government. This is a lawsuit against the federal government for their violations of the Victims' Rights Act, okay, in agreeing to that 2008 plea deal that was done in secret. Virginia Roberts and these other victims, they want that unsealed so the public can see it, and they want this overturned, that secret plea deal that only got him 13 months in a cushy jail cell, so that he will be prosecuted. Now, the attorneys who are handling this case, these are not these are not ambulance chasers. One is this guy Casal is a former federal judge. This other guy, Brad, I think it's Brad Edwards, is a very prominent Florida attorney, okay, with big practices, and they're doing this pro bono, okay? So whatever's going on there, we need to keep an eye on this, because I really think that we could get some traction in this case and expose some people, okay? And so I'm going to be doing a lot of shows on this case and bringing on a lot of more guests on this topic, okay? Now, let's take a look at Jeffrey Epstein. Fascinating guy. There's something going on here, okay? He was born in Coney Island, Brooklyn, okay? And he went to Lafayette High School. Now, this is a very mediocre high school, okay, back then in the 60s when he went to this school. Think of Welcome Back Kotter. That's the kind of school this guy went to, Okay? This billionaire. He wasn't a billionaire growing up in Coney Island, going to Lafayette High School. Okay? Something happened. Now, he graduates from Lafayette High School, and he starts attending classes at Cooper Union, which is this big fancy liberal college in the Village in Manhattan. And at that time, back in 69 and 71, they only accepted a few kids. You know, you had to be really, they were very selective of the students they accepted. And once they accepted you, tuition was free. Okay? So how do you get in there? Okay. Now, he was there for a couple of years, and then he goes over to NYU. I don't know if NYU was free at the time or how he got in there. I don't know. No one knows, really, because there's so much of his background is a mystery. Now, he leaves NYU without a degree. This is on his own Wikipedia, his own biography, right? He leaves in around 72, 73, and he goes to teach calculus at the Dalton School. The Dalton School is this Upper East Side, 89th Street in Manhattan. It's a junior high, a senior high combined school. Where the little boys wear blazers and ties, and the girls wore those stereotypical Girl Scout schoolgirl outfits that later on he had this fetish, right? So it's very interesting how he wound up there teaching without a college degree to begin with, okay? Because college dropouts teaching at one of New York City's Upper East Side most prestigious schools, okay? Very mysterious to me. Now, according to his bio, he's teaching at this school, and he's like Robin Williams in the Dead Poets Society. He has all this charisma and all this charm and all this, and he's such a passionate teacher, right? And he took he gained the attention, okay, of a guy named, of Bear Stearns' chairman, Ace Greenberg, right? And what they said in one of these articles was that he was tutoring Ace Greenberg's son, and he began a friendship with Ace Greenberg's daughter. And Ace Greenberg offered him a position over at Bear Stearns trading bonds. Okay? Now, you got to understand, I grew up in Staten Island around the same time. And there were a lot of high school graduates, you know, maybe did a year in college or whatever, never got a degree or whatever, and went to work for these brokerage houses, okay? So that was common. But you didn't go in there and 6 years later come out a billionaire, which is what Jeffrey Epstein claims happened, okay? And you don't go from being a teacher to going to Bear Stearns and becoming a billionaire. Very unusual. Now, according to Epstein, he says he left Bear Stearns because he wanted to work for himself. As he wanted to work for himself, and then he announced that he was only going to accept clients that had $1 billion in assets or more. He wouldn't accept anybody less than that, okay? But then what we find out from reading the Vanity Fair article is that's not true. When he left Bear Stearns, by the way, when he had to leave Bear Stearns because he was questioned in an SEC investigation about insider trading, okay? He was never charged with anything, but he had to leave Bear Stearns. He goes out on his own. And he goes and he doesn't talk about this in his bio, but Vanity Fair dug all this up, that he went to work with this guy named Hoffenberg. Hoffenberg, at the time of the Vanity Fair article, I don't know where he is today, but Hoffenberg was in prison, okay, because he was running this kind of a Ponzi-type scheme. And Vanity Fair did a lot of great investigation on this, a lot of great reporting where they dug up all kinds of these financial transactions and deals around that time with Epstein and Hoffenberg and these different kind of people that can only be described as shady. Okay. Now, when he left Bear Stearns, he formed his own company called J. Epstein and Company. But he only had one client, and this is the guy that Robert Morrow was telling us about tonight, Leslie Wexner. Leslie Wexner is the owner of The Limited. He's the owner of Abercrombie & Fitch, Victoria's Secrets, okay? And he owned the most expensive piece of property in New York City, the largest townhouse in New York City. And we don't know, either he gave it to Epstein or he sold it to him for $1. There's other reports that he sold it for $20 million, and Epstein paid him $20 million. We don't know. It's owned by a trust The same trust was purchased by Wexler years and years and years ago. It's still owned by that same trust today. Okay. But interesting, they described how this house was decorated. And when you went in there, there was a whole shelf, like a bookcase, of framed eyeballs, taxidermy eyeballs, when you walk in, cover the whole wall. And then there was all these art masterpieces when you walk in there, right? And then there's also a giant African man who's naked when you walk in there. Not a human, there's a piece of art that portrays a giant naked African man as you walk into this largest townhome in New York City. And also, too, it's very interesting, they described that he had a taxidermied black cat on top of his piano in his office there. They're very bizarre decor to this mansion. Now, at that time, he also had a huge property in New Mexico. He had a huge mansion in Palm Beach and a private island in the Virgin Islands. Okay? Now, in the Palm Beach mansion, he had gargoyles out in front of that house. This is pretty much a modern kind of style house. You can look it up online, see pictures of it. But for some reason, he had gargoyles guarding the front door. Okay. Also, too, now when the police went in there with a search warrant, and they saw throughout this house in Palm Beach. Now, we don't know about the house in Manhattan, we don't know about the Virgin Island house, but we know for a fact that in that house in Palm Beach, the walls were covered with nude pictures of 15 and 16-year-old girls in frames all around his walls, okay, throughout that house. Everybody described it. Every victim, they interviewed about 10, 15 victims, these cops, walking through that house in Palm Beach, saw these pictures of these nude girls, and the girl said, I know there's pictures of me in there nude, and when the cops went in there, this is, you know what, these nude little teenage girls all over the walls, and it looks just like the girls we interviewed in our probable cause affidavit. So why this man was not charged with possession of child pornography, and everybody who worked in that house and everybody who lived in that house was all could be charged with possession and distribution of child pornography. And why it never happened, I don't know. It's not even in the indictment, so who knows what the hell went on with that. Okay, now good old Robert Morrow, he gave us a list of some friends, but some of the friends that I looked up was Evelyn Rothschild, was a friend of Jeffrey Epstein, Prince Andrew, Donald Trump, Alan Dershowitz, Ghislaine Maxwell, who's the daughter of the UK publisher Robert Maxwell. Another thing that Robert didn't bring up was that Ghislaine Maxwell is like a real kind of talk about her father was a Mossad agent. Kind of makes sense now hearing that, because she's known as this kind of adventurer who flies helicopters and all kinds of stuff like that. Now, there was a quote in the 2003 Vanity Fair article about Ghislaine Maxwell, okay, where it says, it describes that Epstein is known about town as a man who loves women, lots of them, mostly young. Model types have been heard saying they are full of gratitude to Epstein for flying them around, and he is a familiar face to many of Victoria's Secret's girls. One young woman recalls being summoned by Ghislaine Maxwell to a concert at Epstein's townhome, where the women seemed to outnumber the men by far. These were not women you'd see at Upper East Side dinners, the woman recalls. Many seemed foreign and dressed a little bizarrely. The same guest also attended a cocktail party thrown by Maxwell that Prince Andrew attended, which was filled, she says, with young Russian models. Some of the guests were horrified, she says. Now, that was back in 2003. Now, you got to remember, he was flying Clinton around on his private plane in 2002. In 2003, this is what they're writing about him and his parties at his mansion over there. Alan Dershowitz said in that same 2003 Vanity Fair article, as he was getting to know Epstein, his wife asked him if he would still be close to him if Epstein suddenly filed for bankruptcy. Dershowitz says, absolutely. I would be as interested in him as a friend if we had hamburgers on the sidewalk in Coney Island and talked about his ideas. Now, again, the author of this article, Vicky Ward, says, hey, man, I talked to this guy. I don't see what brilliant ideas they're talking about, man. The guy, he didn't seem that brilliant to me. Donald Trump was another one of his buddies. Okay, now let's take a look at Donald Trump. I've had my own personal run-ins with Donald Trump. Donald Trump, interestingly enough, is the owner of the Miss USA pageant the Miss Teen USA pageant. Now he bought both of them, and he moved their ceremonies to Trump-owned properties that either he owns or he controls. Now, Trump was quoted in this same article as well. And he says, I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy, booms Trump from a speakerphone. He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them on the younger side. No doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life. Where did Prince Andrew and Epstein hang around? On vacations? At Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, the Trump resort. Okay. By the way, okay, it gets even more interesting. Who else was reported to be living down there at Mar-a-Lago on the run, on the hideout, was Adnan Khashoggi. You guys know I talk about Adnan Khashoggi a lot. He's involved in just about everything. But he also has those same kind of allegations, Adnan Khashoggi, about using prostitutes and escorts and blackmail and all that kind of stuff like that. Oh, by the way, Epstein himself, okay, describes himself in his 2003 Vanity Fair article that he's an enthusiastic member of the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations. Okay, now let's get into real quick. We had a good old Robert Morrow describe the 2005 case, and what happened was this woman, she contacts the local Palm Beach police because her 14-year-old daughter had been to Epstein's mansion and was paid $300 for stripping and giving him a massage, and then he started molesting her. Okay, there was an 11-month undercover investigation. Okay, followed by a search of his home. Now, there was a whole series of young girls that went to the same high school that were constantly being recruited by older girls that worked directly for Epstein and his assistant, okay? Now, there's another thing we have to figure out what's going on here, okay? Because I have a 14-year-old kid, and I know her friends and the relationships with her friends and stuff like that, okay? And kids that age, they like to gossip. They like to talk about people. And if this girl is going around to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different girls and asking them, hey, do you want to go to this man's house, this millionaire's house, and give him a rub down for $300? Some of these girls are going to say no. Okay, they're not all going to say yes. So if there's 10 girls that went there, 20 girls that went there, she had to have been contacting 30, 40, 50 girls all over town. This had to be common knowledge. The school had to have known about this. There's no way they could not have known about it, which brings into my question of what went on there, what kind of controls were going on in that school and in that neighborhood, and how did they come up with a school transcript inside Epstein's office? That, to me, that's highly suspicious. Okay, but being a former school teacher himself, he would be familiar with that. And maybe even, I think some school teachers too, there's a lot of them that are into this same kind of proclivities, and they kind of can spot each other and travel in the same kind of groups and stuff like that. So now when the cops went there and finally searched the home, throughout the house, they found all kinds of naked pictures of these teenage girls, but they also found concealed cameras. Okay, for the purpose that they described in their probable cause affidavit as being there for the purpose of blackmail. Okay. Now, another thing that they found while they were in there was his Amazon.com account. Okay, and that's very interesting too, because some of the books that he bought from Amazon.com, one was called Slavecraft: Roadmaps for Erotic Servitude, Principles, Skills, and Tools. Another one was called Training with Miss Abernathy, a workbook for erotic slaves and their owner. Another one was called S&M 101, a realistic introduction. So, when you hear people in mainstream media or even alternative media hosts saying to you, oh, well, it's he said, she said. Oh, these girls, they were 17 years old. They're getting flown all on vacations all around the world. They weren't complaining. Okay, the fact is that these girls were 14 years old, okay, when they were first being approached and first being molested. Okay, that they were being mind-controlled, manipulated, and overwhelmed by this much older man and his staff of thugs that he had working for her there in that house. Everyone who worked in that house, okay, should have been arrested. They were all interviewed, okay? And one of these things was one of his butlers, the one who later on was arrested. I'm going to take a break here. His butler that was arrested for the that thing there with the address book, he said that up to 3 times a day, 2 times to 3 times a day, little 13, 14, 15-year-old girls were showing up at his house to massage him. That's enough of a crime in my book, okay, that just doing that alone. The fact that he had all these child pornography pictures in his home, that's another reason this guy should be under the jail at this point. Now, if you think that's a lot, what I'm telling you now, Willie, I got a whole other page of notes that we're going to get into here with some other stuff that I have personal involvement with. So we'll be right back after this message. You're listening to the Opperman Report, brought to you by audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. We'll be right back after these messages.
If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tammy on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils Independent Distributor. These 100% therapeutic grade oils help support the body's natural functions. You can click on her website posted on Essentially Tammy, that's T-A-M-I, to see the current deals and check out the benefits of oils such as frankincense, joy, valor, lemon, thieves, panaway, and many more. Email Jocotami, that's Jocatami @yahoo.com, or call 352-239-8546. That's 352-239-8546. Hey, don't forget good old Amanda at Pacific West Bamboo. Pacific West Bamboo, 503-839-8126. You can reach her at demroots@oppermail.com. Pacific West Bamboo, your number one source for timber, construction, and craft-grade bamboo poles, plants, products, and more. They specialize in eco-friendly reclaimed wood products for the home and garden. They're located in Portland, Oregon, servicing the Northwest for over 10 years. They can be reached at 503-839-8126. That's 503-839-8126. Her Facebook page is Pacific West Bamboo. They can and do ship nationwide, and they're currently getting a new line of bamboo flooring, veneers, and laminates made from Guadawa bamboo, one of the world's strongest bamboos, grown and produced and manufactured in Central America using only economically and environmentally friendly practices and standards. Good old Mike Gray at infinityhomeplans.com. Check out Infinity Home Plans and Design Services, your resource for 3D and 2D draftsman services. They offer a multitude of products, including stock home plans, 2D digital drawings, 3D models, renderings, and more. That's infinityhomeplans.com. Hey, don't forget emailrevealer.com. That's my website, emailrevealer.com. And we offer all different kinds of services. Current place of employment locate. Let's say you're trying to locate where your ex-husband or your ex-wife is working so you can collect on child support. You contact us, we can locate their place of employment for you and help you collect on that child support. Let's say you think that your husband or your wife is cheating on you. Give us their email address and we can trace it back to online dating websites and dating services. So we have a multitude of services on emailrevealer.com. Hey, don't forget the New World Mexican Women. Okay, and just Google New World Mexican Women. You can find their book where they first describe their love letters to their men and their sons and their uncles and their brothers who have traveled from South America to North America to work as migrant workers. But the women down in this town there in Guerrero, Mexico, they want their men to come back. So they've written these beautiful love letters, and they've put them all in this beautiful coffee table book. First, the letters are written in Spanish, handwritten. You can see pictures of the people writing the books. And then it comes on after that, and it's typewritten in English. And then also, too, the second half of the book is teaching you how to make authentic Mexican jewelry. from these New World Mexican women. You can find their book on Lulu.com. It's only $19, or you can download the digital edition for free. That's New World Mexican Women, and it's a two-part book, where first part is the love letters, and the second part is the making the handmade jewelry, the authentic Mexican jewelry. But you can also contact...
Yeah.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. The show is brought to you by Audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com, get yourself a free audio book. Hey, real quick, hey, Scott, I want to thank you for helping to produce out tonight. And Patty, can you guys want to give a plug for what's coming up on your shows?
No, go ahead, Patty.
Okay, I'll go first.
Okay. She's so slow. Patty's so slow. Like a turtle.
Turtle, that's what I am.
Yeah.
Saturdays at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, where the wild things grow on the Awake Radio Network at www.awakeradio.us. And then Mondays at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, Turtle Talk on the Awake Radio Network. Thanks.
Hey, Scott.
I got a fast mute button. So it's Crossing the Void Radio comes on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on the Hazy Radio Network. This week it's going to be a great show. We're going to be talking about the anniversary of the day the music died, which is February 3rd, 1959. The next day, February 4th, of course, which is the Wednesday. R. Gary Patterson, a music genius. I mean, music encyclopedia, knows everything I've ever asked him about. Is going to be on the show, and he's bringing a special guest with him, Miss Peggy Sue Guerin, the woman who actually inspired the song Peggy Sue.
Oh, very good. I'm tempted to break in a song. Okay, Scott, thank you very much, and thank you, Patty Walking Turtle, which is why I said she was so slow. So we'll get right back into this real quick, so I don't have that much time. But let's see. Okay, where did we leave off? Oh yeah, what do you know? This guy with this case in 2005. Now, what happened is, as soon as the cops started knocking on these little teenage girls' doors to talk to their parents and interview these teenage kids, of course these little kids started talking to each other. Word got back to Epstein. What he did was he hired private investigators. I tracked back these private investigators. These were guys that worked for Roy Black. Roy Black, you got to know, he worked for Rush Limbaugh. He was an attorney for Rush Limbaugh in his case. He was an attorney for that Kennedy kid down there that raped those people down there. So Roy Black is a huge, powerful lawyer, and here he has his PI contacting these little girls now and asking them, hey, what are you telling the cops? What are you going to say at your next interview? All that kind of stuff. Now, Epstein assembles a dream team of lawyers, okay? Gerald Lefcourt. I know Gerald Lefcourt. I knew Gerald Lefcourt from the 70s and the 80s back in New York City when he was Abby Hoffman's lawyer, okay? Gerald Lefcourt's a cool guy, okay? He's a big shot lawyer now, multi-billionaire, doesn't seem to want to take my calls, okay? But, there was a time, when good old Jerry Lefcourt, his PIs and stuff needed our help, but I guess they don't now, and we couldn't get a statement out of him. Alan Dershowitz, who's a Harvard law professor, and you got to remember, too, Epstein made a donation or a pledge to donate $25 million to Harvard Law. Best buddies with Alan Dershowitz. And he also got another buddy of his, became president of Harvard Law School, a buddy of Epstein. So Epstein had a lot of control over there at Harvard Law, and he definitely was good friends with Dershowitz. And he also hired Kenneth Starr, okay, from the good old Whitewater and Clinton investigation, all that stuff. Very interesting, because now here you got Kenneth Starr kind of backing up Clinton to help him cover up for Clinton. It's reported that Dershowitz flew down to Palm Beach and hammered out the sealed plea deal with the conspirators. By the way, I don't know if Robert Morrow mentioned this. In this plea deal, which is a secret sealed plea deal, we don't know what it says, but in it we do know this, that any possible co-conspirators to the convicted child molester, the sex offender, Jeffrey Epstein, if he had any co-conspirators, they are given lifetime immunity for the crimes they committed with Jeffrey Epstein at that time. Okay? Now, at the time, too, they even went down there with pictures of MySpace accounts and all kinds of stuff to smear these victims, little 14, 15, 16-year-old girls, calling them drug users and accusing them of theft and other teenage misbehavior, okay? Now, the FBI and the U.S. Attorney General for the state of Florida were also investigating, okay, because as you know, the cops down there, they weren't quite satisfied with the action they were getting with the DA, so they went to the FBI and they brought them in. Because you got to remember, too, all these kids were talking about being picked up in planes and taken to New Mexico. They were taken to New York. They were taken to the Virgin Islands. So this is a federal case at this point. The feds had a 53-page indictment prepared, okay, to go after this guy. But in this plea deal, they made a deal where the feds agreed to drop their case as long as the state could guarantee that he was going to plead guilty and get a 2 years in prison. But they didn't even live up to that deal, okay? Now, the U.S. attorney down there for the Southern District of Florida was a guy named Alexander Acosta, okay? So then you got to understand, he was the U.S. attorney, okay, for the state of Florida. That's like Giuliani's role. When Giuliani was the state attorney general, the U.S. attorney in the state of New York, okay, and was prosecuting all those big mafia cases back in the 80s, where I was involved in all those kind of cases, the commission trial, the pizza trial, what's it called? The pizza connection trial, all those big giant trials, okay, with those big bad mean mobsters, right, that everybody's so afraid of. You watch Sopranos and stuff like that. Everybody's afraid, ooh, right? But just think of this, man. Giuliani, we were afraid of him. Giuliani wasn't afraid of these guys. But here's this guy here, the U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta, wrote a 3-page letter to a UK news outlet outlining how the prosecutor's office was being investigated and harassed and intimidated by this dream team of investigators and lawyers that Epstein was able to put together, and that Epstein and his lawyer, his team, they were hiring former prosecutors out of this office. They were going over his head to the federal government to put pressure on the federal investigators, okay? Okay. Now, in the probable cause affidavit, and this is available online, okay, you can find on the Smoking Gun, Epstein was finally charged with 4 counts of unlawful sex with minors and 1 molestation count. Okay, this is when I think there was like 15 or 16 people in that probable cause affidavit. Now, instead of following the police recommendation, the prosecutors considered the evidence weak because the Dershowitz coming down and with the MySpace account information on these victims. Okay, so rather than either choosing to prosecute or decline to prosecute, what he did was he presented it to a grand jury, which is very unusual. Okay, anybody can tell you this. It's very unusual in a non-capital case for a district attorney to present the case to the grand jury. Okay, it's usually only in murder trials. Okay, and the grand jury, and the old expression that you can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. So if it's like the jockeys in those fixed races, man. If they're pulling back the reins on the horse, you know, this is what the DA can do when he's presenting his case to the grand jury. They can pull back the reins, man, so that the grand jury does not return a true bill of indictment. In this case, they probably tried as hard as they could, but they did come back with a true bill, but only for one single charge of felony solicitation of prostitution, okay, which is a joke when you consider that the home was filled with child pornography. You got several witnesses, victims, who come right out and say, and corroborating witnesses that said that they were underage, statutory rape, all kinds of stuff. All of this was just pushed aside, and they come back with one little felony. Okay, now he was serving, he got an 18-month sentence, okay? But of that, he only served 13 months, okay? And on his release, he became a registered sex offender, which he is today. But you know what he does? He gives his Virgin Island address for his sex offender registry. So if you live next door to this guy in Manhattan, or you live next door to this guy in Palm Beach, and you look up to see, well, are there any sex offenders living next door to me? One of the biggest in the world could be living right next to you, and he doesn't show up on it because his address is down the Virgin Islands. Okay? Now, you and I couldn't get away with that. He's getting away with that. Now, this is a guy that had 3 teenage girls, underage girls, coming to his house 3 times a day, all this time. Okay? And while he was in jail, he couldn't keep his hands off himself while he's in jail there with all the stink and the filth in those jails. You have no idea. But even for the 8 hours he was in there a day, he couldn't keep his hands away from himself that he has to buy Lubriderm hand lotion and petroleum jelly, okay, in jail. He served his time in a vacant wing of the Palm Beach County Stockade. Okay, and he was allowed to go out on work release 6 days a week. Now, this is common for people who have DUI convictions or domestic violence convictions. You don't want to lose your job. A guy's a working man. You don't want him to lose his job, so you give him a deal where you can serve, if it's a case, under a year. Okay? If you get a sentence of under 1 year, and if this goes, if it's over 1 year and you serve 364 days, then you can apply for this. But they gave it to this guy right out of the box. He's supposed to get 18 months. Okay, but and then even, they only did 13 months. But so no matter what, he didn't qualify for this under normal sentencing. But and then even when he gets in there, he's in a vacant wing. He's the only guy in there. Okay, all by himself, doing whatever he wants. Okay, and he's allowed to leave during the daytime for 16 hours and get on his private plane and fly to the Virgin Islands. Get on his private plane and fly to Manhattan. Okay. And by the way, this is the same police department that he had previously donated $90,000 to. Now, they returned it to him. Okay, but like I said before, I guess it's the thought that counts. Okay. Now, his former butler was a guy named Alfredo Rodriguez. Okay, and he stole Jeffrey Epstein's little black book, and that's where we get all these names. Okay, but now you got to understand that he tried to sell it, and he got busted for that. And they gave him 18 months. None of this and this is a working man. They didn't let him go out and go to work. They gave him 18 months, man, okay, in jail for trying to sell. He didn't even get the money. He tried to sell the book, okay? And Special Agent Christina Pryor reviewed the material and agreed it was information that, quote, would have been extremely useful in investigating and prosecuting the case, including names and contact information of material witnesses and additional victims. Special Agent Christina Pryor says there's additional victims. There's additional witnesses. Okay? They have the book now. Why can't they prosecute these names? Okay? Well, one reason why is because in the plea deal, his co-conspirators got lifetime immunity for those cases. But they should still be surveilling these people and trying to come up with something else. You'd think they would. Out of all these things, you'd think they would come up with one or two. Now, people got to understand that the current litigation, okay, it's not to make money. It's not to write a book. They don't want to. It's not like the Tiger Woods case where the girls were coming forward. They wanted to write a book and they want to make money. They want to get traffic to their website, okay? This is a lawsuit against the federal government. They're not suing Epstein. It's not he said, she said, okay? That's settled. These are victims. If they were not victims named in this police investigation and in this prosecution and in this conviction of Jeffrey Epstein, the case would have been thrown out already. So we know that that the judge knows that they're involved in this, okay? Because it's been going on for a long time. 2008, I think. But the litigation, the current litigation right now is for against the United States government for violations of the Crime Victim Rights Act, okay? Because they agreed to this plea deal, this secret plea deal, and they did not notify the victims that there was even a plea or came about. These kids didn't find out until later on. They got a letter from the FBI, and not all of them even got the letter. Okay. And once again, I want to point out that the Florida lawyers, Brad Edwards and the former federal judge, Paul Casale, these are not ambulance chasers. They're doing this case here pro bono, and what do you call it? These are top-notch, highly respected lawyers there in the state of Florida. Okay. Now, in this current litigation, the pilot was deposed. Okay. His name is Larry Vysotsky. Okay, and he described some of the people that were on the plane. this private plane that Epstein owns a couple planes in the company of young girls. And mentioned in the deposition were Bill Clinton, Britain's Prince Andrew, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, former Colombian President Andreas, I can't even pronounce his name, Andreas Pastrana Arango. Okay. Now, you got to remember, now, we're trying to figure out where Epstein got his money from. And where could have Epstein have gotten his money from? I think it was through blackmail. But I'm sure that when you fly in a private plane with a Colombian president, a lot of those people become billionaires in their life. Okay, I think that's a common occurrence, and I don't think we would be too surprised at that. Okay, I know we got 12 minutes. Okay, we're going to be bringing on some callers after this. If you want to call in, 702-605-4894. We'll be taking calls in about 10 minutes after we drop a couple of stations here. Okay, Obama's economic advisor, Larry Summers, was on the plane. Billionaire Ron Burkle was on the plane. Now, actor Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker. Now, we're going to get back to them in a second, okay? And by the way, they could all be subpoenaed in this case because they were mentioned in the deposition. Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, she's the daughter of the late media mogul Robert Maxwell, and she's been accused by Victoria Roberts, who is one of the complainants in this case, of photographing Epstein's victims in sexually explicit poses and keeping the child pornography on her computer, engaging in lesbian sex with underage females she procured for Epstein. Now, she's denied these allegations, okay, but she was at Chelsea Clinton's wedding just recently, okay. Clinton shared Epstein's plane with Maxwell on at least 11 flights between 2002 and 2003, before any of these allegations went public, okay? Along with his Secret Service detail, with his aide, Doug Band. Maxwell Kellen is another girl that worked for Epstein, and two other women described only as Janice and Jessica. Okay, 1 month later, records show Clinton hopped a ride from Miami to Westchester on a flight that also included Epstein, Maxwell, Kellen, and a woman only described as one female, okay? Now, before we were talking about Jean-Luc Brunel, the modeling agency, Scout, okay, and who somehow has this ability to get the passports, and this is what was alleged by Victoria Roberts. Who else flew on the plane? Courtney Love. Now, you remember we had Courtney Love's father on our show. Interesting character, Courtney Love, because she grew up in a sex cult, and she also went to middle school at the Presidio in San Francisco at the same time the Presidio sex child, what's that thing called, the daycare center molestation scandal was going on. She's currently, or was recently, managed by Sam Lufty, that was Britney Spears' manager during her year-long meltdown. He was her only controller during that whole time when she had such a bad meltdown that ended with her father getting conservatorship over her whole life. Chris Tucker was on one of these plane rides with Clinton and with Epstein on his private plane. They went to Africa together on an AIDS conference. What a porn star was on the plane as well. But Tucker, might want to remember, okay? This guy has an interesting background as well. Because when you look up Chris Tucker private plane, what do you find? That in February, Chris Tucker, he has his own private plane, by the way, too. I don't know how he pulled that one off, but he has his own private plane, too. And he flew the little boy, Gavino, the little boy that was in with Michael Jackson in the last child molestation trial, living with, he's the little boy that was hugging and laying on Michael Jackson in that, Martin Bashir documentary, Living with Michael Jackson. And then after that aired the next day, there was a big giant scandal, because everyone says, what the hell's going on with this little boy and Michael Jackson holding hands and then hugging and all this kind of stuff, being all weird. And there was such a media storm that little Gavin called up Chris Tucker and said, please, Mr. Tucker, put us on your private plane and take us back to Michael Jackson. Now, you think there was a media scandal over this, they would get him as far away from Michael Jackson as they could. So I don't know if it's this little boy's intention that he wanted to go back to Michael Jackson, or there was another inspiration to get this kid back to Michael Jackson when the crap was hitting the fan during that. Kevin Spacey. Now, you want to look into this thing with Kevin Spacey about, there was this weird thing that went on with Kevin Spacey in London. Now, some people say Kevin Spacey's homosexual. He denies it. I don't know. But there was this weird thing that happened with him in the middle of the night in a park in London where he claimed he was mugged, and then he went back the next day and said, I wasn't really mugged. I tripped over my dog. We don't know what happened there. But again, this is this weird cast of characters that we have here on this plane with Clinton and Chris Tucker and all these people, the Israeli prime minister and porn stars, porn actress Shantae Davies. This is not me making this up. She's on the flight records, okay? She was on this plane. And by the way, too, the companies that she did her little films for, these little softcore film stuff like that, was bought up by Larry Flint. So who knows what's going on there. But it's just weird stuff, okay? Weird stuff. Now, in the Black Book, let's give you a little list of names in the little Black Book. By the way, you know what? When they contacted Shantae Davis about all of this, her comment was, I'm really not interested in being slandered in the media for having known this person a long time ago. Some of the things said are not things I have information on. So we know she's on the plane. She's on the flight logs. Okay, what went on, we don't know. We do know that Epstein is a convicted sex offender. Now, other high-profile names in Epstein's book include Special Envoy for the Middle East Peace, George Mitchell, New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, New York City Governor Andrew Cuomo, Barbara Walters, Alec Baldwin, Ralph Fiennes, I don't know who he is, George Hamilton, Dustin Hoffman, Kevin Spacey, Liz Hurley, Lauren Hutton, Janice Dickinson. Now, Janice Dickinson is a woman who's been a victim. She's an abuse victim. We know that for a fact. She came out about the Bill Cosby case. We know that. It seems like she's the kind of person who could be a serial type victim of this kind of thing. Okay, because her name does seem to turn up over and over again. Okay. Guys, we're not taking calls yet, okay? Give me a couple of minutes. We'll take calls at around 7 o'clock when we drop a couple of stations. Let's see who else was on the plane. Naomi Campbell, Christy Turlington, Henry Kissinger, Joan Rivers, Courtney Love. We talked about Courtney Love. Mick Jagger. Now, Mick Jagger is an interesting guy. I'd like to hang out with Mick Jagger. But why would Mick Jagger want to hang out with Epstein? Okay? We have Vicky Ward's article and stuff like that. She says Epstein wasn't an interesting guy. No one thought he was interesting. This guy had one appeal to him, okay? And that was just about it. Cornelia Guest, Phil Collins, Itzhak Perlman, Simon Le Bon, Charlie Rose, Richard Branson. Again, why does Richard Branson need this guy? Playwright Candace Bushnell, Vera Wang. Okay, I think we've heard some stories about Vera Wang in the past. And erotic film star Koo Stark, who once dated Prince Andrew. And then you got all kinds of people down from Palm Beach, money guys, what are these guys? Jimmy and Jane Buffett, you know, those kind of people. So that's where we are with that, you know. I think the biggest things we need to look at here, okay, we're going to be dropping PSN in 2 minutes. PSN, thank you for being on the air tonight. Next week we have Mark Ebner. We'll be talking about Bill Cosby. We'll be dropping also to Hazy Radio in a couple of minutes. And coming up after me on good old Hazy Radio is Clarissa, who's the host of Periscope Uncensored, and she's going to have a guy on there named David Roundtree, who's like a Ghostbuster type, I think, a ghost paranormal investigator type. Okay, now, so back to my investigation of this situation here. I think this is something we're going to revisit many times in the future, okay, because there's just way too much meat here. I also think that Dershowitz, I agree with our guest tonight, Robert Morrow, that Dershowitz is scrambling, and he's a loose cannon, and he's kind of all over the place, okay? So we're going to be leaving PSN, we're going to be leaving Scott Hare, we're going to be leaving the Talk Superstation. Thank you all. We had a great catch. We're not taking calls. Give me a break. Okay. Thank you all. Next week we have Mark Ebner coming out. After that we have Dave McGowan's coming back. We're going to be doing a story about the moon hoax landing. Then also coming up we have about the Kinsey cover-up. Okay, I forget her last name. The first name is Judith, but she's a very cool guest. We also have a couple of guests coming on. We're trying to figure that out about the Paul is dead controversy, about the whole theories about is Paul dead, is Paul not dead, and all that kind of stuff. And our guests are of the opinion that yes, Paul is dead. Okay, and then we hope to have Nick Bryant. Nick Bryant's the author of Franklin Scandal. Okay, I'm going to have a link to that up on the Opperman Report blog. Okay, and don't forget, if you want to get a hold of me, it's oppermanreport@gmail.com. You can find me there if you want to advertise, get some questions. People send me a lot of good guests. Someone sent me some links about Marilyn Monroe. Going to be doing a show about that as well soon. So thank you all. We'll be saying goodnight to PSN. Well, the PSN's gone already. And say goodnight soon to TalkStream, Talk Superstation, and good old Scott here, and Hazy Radio. We're going to take some, you know what? After our break tonight, we'll start taking some calls, 702-605-4894 for the after show, hosted by Ed Opperman, private investigator. And you can Skype us at ed.opperman on Skype. Okay? And we might have to add you as a friend. But we'll get you calls. We'll take a nice little 5-minute break at the 7 o'clock hour. And we'll come back right after this. I want to thank Robert